Hey guys, so we're picking up where we left off in class on Monday. We were covering genre modes, digital tools, and design. So we covered genre in class and reviewed modes a little bit and kind of went over some of the things you're going to be doing in this presentation. So we kind of finished off here and reviewed a little, but we're mostly kind of covering some of your practice with modes and then digital tools and design elements that you're going to need to think about at least at an introductory level for your digital essay. So we're going to pick up with genres and text are multimodal, which is kind of a term that we reviewed a little bit today, or yesterday in class. I want to quickly review just the meaning systems, which are the different modes or pathways for making meaning. There's the written, audio, visual, gestural, spatial. I think in your reading it might have used oral instead of audio, but that's anything relating to sound. So if you kind of think about it this way, the way we talked about in class, these are the 5 pathways through which we make meaning and send meaning, which is one of the reasons why all texts are multimodal, because all readers are multimodal, and all readers are going to make meaning based on what they see, what they hear, not just the words that you choose in the text. So sort of similar to when we're talking about genre, one of the reasons to think about multimodality is that it reinforces composing, so the choices behind the writing and the other layers other than what we just typically think of as like the text or the written mode. It kind of gives you more awareness just with communication beyond the ways that we typically talk about it, and in terms of the writing itself, it requires a higher level of engagement and a need for creativity and being able to think about the multifaceted ways people are going to approach or make meaning out of your text. It gives you a lot more purpose and agency behind your writing because you're the person in control and really making a lot of choices in a lot of different layers. It also gives you a much sharper and varied or different sense of rhetorical choices and impact, more awareness of what kinds of things really do impact a text and how much really impacts the text. We talked about in class, people will ask, like, does it matter what my paper looks like or what this looks like? And it always matters, again, how everything looks or how everything sounds, because readers are going to make meaning with all 5 pathways, regardless of whether you as the writer made choices using those pathways or taking those pathways into consideration. And it's a necessary part of research, reading, writing in academia to be able to really pick apart and understand the different layers that go into communication. So what you're going to be doing here is practicing using any notes that you have from either the previous lecture, reading, anything like that. You're going to complete this in your notebook. So as we said, a text is anything that can be read. So this is a commercial that I want you to read, I guess. And we kind of went over this in class a little bit, but you have some prompts to answer in your notebook that we're going to be using at the beginning of class on Wednesday. Oh, sorry about that. So the first one is to determine what the purpose or message is. So it's the composer's, the designer's end game or message, what they're trying to accomplish. The target audience, remember, target audience isn't everyone or everyone who can see it or everyone that might be persuaded. It's who the creator is designing this text and this information for, who they're making choices based on. So I want you to also think about what are some specific characteristics you can tell about who the audience would be, gender, socioeconomic bracket, any of those things. But also what in the commercial tells you or lets you know that that's who the target audience is. I split apart the modes so that you're doing the written mode first. That's what we're most comfortable with. It's mixed, I understand, a little bit with oral mode, because as you watch the commercial, you'll notice they're verbally telling you like what the reasons are. That's what I want you to think about. They want to sell this car. Obviously it's the Jaguar commercial, as you'll see. What reasons do they give you for why you should buy this car, why the target audience, I guess, should buy this car? And then other modes. Where specifically do you see the 4 other modes being used to support the message? Think about things like color scheme, music, tone, narrator, maybe things being repeated, camera angles, body language of the actors in the commercial. There's a lot of things that can kind of be done. You don't necessarily have to cover all 4 modes. Just try to think of at least 4 or 5 other things being done to support the reasons being given in this commercial. So we're going to get into some of the stuff that we really didn't get to talk too much about in class on Monday, which is the common design elements and then the digital tools that you'll be using in this essay. One thing about design is just to keep in mind that, as I mentioned in class when we talked about genre, that we as readers are going to read left to right, top to bottom, and that digital text don't have to be linear, as you notice with some of the examples. You're welcome to design and arrange your own content and figure out how you want that to look based on your audience. So I want to talk about some common tools and affordances that are kind of at your disposal since you are creating a digital text. One of those is images. They help show readers things you want them to see. So again, like you can try to describe something to the best of your ability. It's always going to be a little bit more effective and a little more helpful to your reader to have an actual picture, right? So they also make, and images also make excellent emotional appeals, which is something we'll talk about. They really can help set the tone for readers for different sections of your essay, can illustrate points that you're trying to make. It can help kind of visually symbolize what a part of your paper is about. So there's a lot of things you can use use images for. Videos are similar. Rather than having to tell your readers all the details of the story, you can embed a video of a news clip and let them watch it. So again, like it's a way for them to be able to see things that support what you're talking about. Another thing you can think about is your infographics, charts, graphs, that they can also make excellent visual evidence or illustration of a problem. It can also be a visual aid to help illustrate data. The problem is as I'm going to talk about down here a little bit, you have to tell people about it. Graphs can be really difficult to read, and readers have to stop what they're doing with the content in order to make sense of your graph. So one of the things we've been talking about is if it's a graph, that's great, you want to use it, but make sure that you give readers context for where it came from, how to read it, what you think it shows, that kind of stuff. Hyperlinks is the other thing. They can be highly gestural. You're guiding readers in terms of where you want them to go to find more information. So you're selecting the information that you want them to have access to and putting it in front of them. They can be linked to your sources, but you also want to think about helpful info, other interesting reading, where you want them to go next to continue looking into this issue. So more using hyperlinks for more than just citing your sources, but really helping it be intertextual and a platform for the conversation that's taking place, and where you want readers to go from there. And again, with images, videos, infographics, sometimes hyperlinks, you might want to make sure that readers know why they're there, especially if they're used as a source. We need context, we need commentary, so just make sure that you're not just dropping it into the essay. So kind of moving on, so we talked about some specific tools like links, images that you can use in your essay. I want you to also think about some basic kind of design elements that you might want to think about. And again, as I've said, even though we're doing some design things, it's not a design class, mostly to think about how these other layers do support text, do support the written mode that we're used to seeing. So I want you to think about one, contrast and emphasis. So do the colors and images contrast well so that you can read things easily? For instance, like black and white contrast. Red and black don't. If you have a black background and red font, it's going to be really difficult for people to figure out what you're doing. You can also use different colors, bolded font, lines to emphasize certain words, phrases, terms that you want people to really pay attention to. Another one is balance and proportion. Balance is how well the content is distributed and weighted. It's kind of like putting having visual weight. We'll look at an example in class on Monday of a digital essay that was based around a horror theme that had a lot of really great design aspects in terms of making everything kind of fit that horror tone and that horror theme, but there was way too much visual weight on white space and pictures and headings, and all of the text was really kind of clumped together, and that would be an example of something that has kind of a poor balance and proportion. You want to think about visual weight here as like the more something draws your eye, the heavier it is. So those text boxes on that example that had all of the text kind of clumped together put way too much visual weight in one little space, and it made it almost really difficult to read, and it would make it really difficult for you to follow the writer's ideas. That if you spaced the text out and used what was available a little bit more, it would make it a lot easier for readers to follow. And proportion is directly related to the size and how well you're kind of emphasizing things that way. So for instance, in the example that we looked at with the horror theme, she has a lot of proportion given to white space and images, and there's not a lot of proportion and space and emphasis given to the text. So we're going to pay way more attention to the fun visual stuff and less to the text. And the text is what is important. So the visual, so the balance is off and the proportion is off. But I want to pull this example up just in case you maybe weren't in class today. I don't remember what this one looked like. And as you can see, the fun little GIFs are working now, whereas in class they weren't. So you can get a little bit better perspective on this one. But just as a quick kind of reminder, you can see how the tone, everything is very well set. Like everything works together, from the font to the background to the GIFs. Like everything really works, except for the balance and proportion and the fact that you have these chunks of text and really small font, a lot of visual weight just in this one little space, which it might work a lot better if she used the same sort of idea, but for individual paragraphs and a lot more kind of spreading out and putting weight on the text and the information rather than chunking it all together in these like tight little boxes. Direction is one. It's just the clarity and fluidity with which readers can navigate. So making sure readers can tell what they're supposed to read next. That seems obvious when you're talking about like a linear print text, but sometimes when you're looking at texts that aren't linear, it can be a little bit difficult to tell exactly where the writer is wanting you to go next. I'm going to look at this quick example from one of the essays that we looked at today, one of the samples. There's a lot of really great visual things happening here. One of the issues is that if you look at the heading here, like we know this is where we're supposed to start because it's left top, right? But we get down here, and where do we go next? Am I supposed to go over here to where the next heading is, or am I supposed to continue to scroll down and go down the column? And that's something that's a little bit confusing and something to think about. Is just making sure if you're working with things like columns or sections that readers know exactly where they're supposed to go. The fourth design element to think about is repetition. And it's just something that helps create consistency for readers in terms of how you're arranging things so they know what to expect. So it could be something as simple as making sure all your headings are questions and not having like one heading be a question, one heading be a statement, one heading be a word. Making sure your font for heading stays the same. So it's just helping kind of create readers' expectations sort of through. Harmony is the last one, and it's just sort of, when everything comes together. When everything is, when the contrast and the balance and design and spacing and everything kind of comes together to create kind of a unified tone, and all the layers are really working together and support each other. And here's sort of a quick, kind of cheesy example of like good versus bad in terms of some of these basic design elements. So in this one, you can kind of tell between this one and this one, the contrast is a little bit better here versus here. You can see that the balance and proportion is a little bit better here, the title, and also here kind of filling out that space and not having awkward, sort of white space over here. And if you're looking at example 2, the bad versus good, the genre they're using here is a research poster, and you can kind of see just the balance and proportion being a little bit better down here versus up here. But this one, like right here, not even having a heading, so you wouldn't really be able to tell what was happening here. Whereas kind of with the wrapping here and kind of using the space well, making the design work a little bit better and look a little bit more professional. And that's one of the things that does matter, when you are thinking about, like, does it matter how your text looks? Well, clearly, like, even though the text might be the same in this one versus this one's going to be the better one because visually people are going to see it as more more credible, more professional, and they're probably going to listen to the information that's provided in the well-designed one versus the bad.